Welcome to the Vinicius Studio podcast, where music, stories, timeless art, and resonant ideas help us live better, think deeper, and feel more alive. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Vinicius Studio podcast. I'm Vinicius, a composer and songwriter, a professor at Berklee College of Music Online, and an Emmy nominee. The following is a conversation with my friend and colleague, Aaron Fullan. Aaron is a very interesting, very outside-the-box kind of creative. He is both an actor and a composer, which is a very unusual combination. In fact, he's the only person I know who does both things. In our conversation, we talked about wearing multiple hats as a creative and balancing that. We talked about an indie film that he is getting off the ground in a very interesting way that I think could mean really good things for our industry if he can pull it off. And we talked about how showing up, even when you're unsure of the results, is one of the keys to growing a career your own way. If you're somebody who has various interests and you sometimes have trouble discerning and balancing between them, this is a very good conversation for you. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoy talking to Aaron. So let's jump right in. Thanks so much. Tell me again about this movie that you're getting off the ground.
Yeah, so I am currently developing a film with a friend of mine named Josh Mancuso, and we had the idea a little over a year ago. We met probably about 2 years ago, making a musical short film about zombies. Seems unlikely, but it happened, and it actually did quite well in the festival circuit.
Massively underrated territory.
Yeah, there's not a lot of competition in zombie musicals about zombies who are having existential crises. But we met there, literally spent maybe a few hours together in the makeup chair getting zombified, and really hit it off, and kept in touch after that for quite a while. And then kind of out of the blue, he reached out and said, "Hey, I'd love to make a movie with you. Let's figure out how to do that." And I said, "Well, I'd love to make a movie with you. Let's figure out how to do that." So we started meeting weekly and brainstorming ideas and coming up with story ideas that we really, really liked, but knew we needed to narrow it down to top 3. And then we narrowed it down to the number 1 that we thought would work the best with our audiences. And he is a sports comedian. His name's Josh Mancuso. Look him up. Does a lot of college sports humor, does a lot of professional sports humor, and has built up quite an audience. So we already knew he had a warm audience for sports content. So we decided on a movie that the working title is Travel Ball. And it's about 2 brothers who end up going from small town to going big time with travel ball, and then basically realizing they were going in the wrong direction to achieve their dreams, and needed to come back home and focus there. So we started developing the whole storyline, but then we're both very busy, and the actual putting the story to paper we knew was going to be a hang up for us. So we're like, let's get a script writer who's willing to just dive into this big dream with us. And we found a gentleman named Nick Schober. He reached out and gave us his pitch, and we really liked it and thought his style would mesh well with our style. And so we brought him on board, and he's been writing like crazy person. And so he just finished Act 2. He's 70 pages in, hopes to finish the first draft by Christmas. So things are rolling. We've had conversations with production companies, distribution companies. Even though we're really early on, we've created a pitch deck. We have been in touch with producers that we're hoping to connect with when the time is right. So we're trying to warm people up to the idea of making this happen when it's ready to go. So
Yeah,
it's been really exciting. It's one of those things that, 2 actors who don't really know what they're doing, but really, really want to make this happen. And A lot of times that's what it takes. And we've had so many people tell us as actors, if you want to level up, the quickest way to do that is to create your own content,
Hmm.
create a movie. Then people have no reason to doubt what you can do. You literally
Because you've already
have the
made it.
proof.
Yeah.
Exactly. People can see you in little tiny roles here and there,
Hmm.
but they're never going to know what you can do on a larger scale until you prove yourself. So
Yeah. Yeah.
this
I
is
love that.
this is our way of doing that. Yeah.
I love that. One of the reasons that's so interesting to me, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, is the this thing that you're doing is it's kind of like do it yourself, right? You've spent so much time you've done a lot of hard work building your audience, right? And so you're trying to lean on that hard work, on the relationship you've already established with your audience that you already have, and then kind of getting this movie off the ground on your own, right? Not on your own. Nobody does this alone. You've realized that very quickly when you start making a movie that nobody
Yes.
does anything alone. Not a thing. But
Hmm.
you build a team around you and you start kind of getting this thing off the ground. And to those some of the folks who listen to my stuff are creatives as well, and that's a I think I'm curious to hear your take on this. I think we were just talking about this off air, um, that if you're able to do that, it establishes a really good precedent that this is a cool and interesting alternative way to get a project like this off the ground, right? And I think
Yes.
our our industry environment is dying for some new alternative ways to get things off the ground. Would you would you agree with that?
Totally agree with that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I know you're a fellow appreciator of the golden age of Hollywood, and
Yes, I
I
am.
have I have watched many interviews with actors and actresses who basically developed in the studio system and being interviewed in the 60s and 70s when the studio system was being demolished completely.
Mm.
And you can tell some of the interviewers ask these leading questions, kind of implying, weren't things so bad in the studio system? There was a lot of abuse of power. There was, you couldn't pick and choose which films you wanted to be. Isn't that terrible? And I would say 90% of them said, I feel bad for the actors of today.
Mm.
I, being under the studio system, enabled me to develop as an actor unlike anybody can now, because we were allowed to fail. If we didn't do well in one of our films, they just reassigned us to another film. It might be a B film, but they let us work back up to that A film position.
Uh-huh.
Whereas now you have a flop, you're going to have a hard time finding work again for a while. Offers aren't going to start coming your way. And so it was basically a training ground for actors to have steady work and to just get better at their craft. So a lot of those actors really felt bad for, and would feel bad for if they were alive today, for the actors of today, because we don't have that stability and that ability to keep trying and get the practice in.
Mhm.
And so I feel like we're desperate for new ways to make opportunities for ourselves. And
Yes.
if anything, Hollywood is getting harder to break into, to find opportunities in, because um, it's just a different world. So indie film, I think, has a unique opportunity here to figure out, how are we going to do it? How, as indie filmmakers, are we going to create opportunities for ourselves? And I think, love it or hate it, social media is one of those things that can really open doors that actors are hoping for.
Mhm.
And I do want to stress this. There are plenty of people who are putting social media people or content creators in their stuff simply because they have an audience. And even massive studio productions are putting in content creators who don't really know
Oh
how
yeah.
to act, but they're going to promote the movie. So
Mhm.
that I that's painful for me to watch, because it has to be both and. You have to be a serious actor who can pull off these roles and carry a film, and have the following. Because
Right.
if those two things are in place, which they can be, then you've got incredible opportunity to take this film that, if you didn't have a social media audience, would have a really hard time finding viewers immediately without a massive marketing budget.
Hmm.
You already have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people very interested to see what you're up to. So if this all goes well, I'd love to just try and replicate this model and help people do the same sort of thing. Like, you want to make something, leverage, not in a using way, but leverage the tools that you have available to you,
Right.
and make it happen.
Yeah, and the audience is so important, and I think it's easy. It's very easy to see building an audience as just kind of adding numbers, but there is
Hmm.
something I see you doing that very, very well, by the way, which is there's something about building an audience, and I think the basis of it, when you're doing it right, is trust, right? They trust you, they know who you are, and so they come to you either on social media or wherever else you're creating things. They come to you because they know what you're about, they know who you are, and they may resonate probably with kind of the way you live and the way you do things and who you are, and
Hmm.
so that becomes the basis, right, for that
Right.
audience creative relationship. So I just find that I
Yes.
just think that's wonderful. So I'm very curious to see how this project that you're working on develops, and if you carve out a new path for us. And speaking of new paths, let's backtrack a little bit because I didn't ask you about this. So, one very unique thing about you is, so like me, you are a composer. Now, unlike me, you're also an actor. And, there are double threats and triple threats and composer or actors who can sing and dance, but I don't think I've ever seen an actor who can compose. So, tell me about that. Tell me about how does that work? Being an actor and being a composer and sort of operating in both avenues.
Yeah. I'll let you know when I find out. Because
Interview's
it
over.
is it's challenging. There are not many. I do know of one. Clint Eastwood wrote some of
That's
the
true.
scores for his films. But
That's true.
other than that, I don't know of any that, have achieved a certain status of recognition. Um, what I love about it is that they are not as set apart as people would imagine they are.
Mm,
People who are in film understand that the entire thing is story. Every person involved in film is telling a story, and they're all storytellers. So, in that sense, I think acting can make you a better composer, composing can make you a better actor because they inform one another. And I think the ultimate experience thus far that I've had, I did a Christmas film indie project that was a musical based on a Christmas carol, and it was my first lead role in a feature film, and then I wrote the score for it afterwards. And so that's a pretty surreal experience to see yourself on screen and then scoring it and then seeing it in a theater. Um, because again, they all speak to each other. And when I was acting, I could imagine later what the music was going to be.
yeah.
And that's a really cool experience to be able to be part of that. And I want to do more of that, which is also one of the reasons I would like to start creating my own films, because that opens that opportunity to, again,
Hmm.
prove that you can do both. It's just one of those things that we all know that a lot of this industry uh, is having to prove yourself and prove your capabilities. And it's not just this industry, plenty of industries. You have to prove yourself. Um, and so that's kind of what I'm in the process of doing. Is I have received a lot of, um, you know, affirmation from both avenues. I originally I had a very standout conversation with someone who did call me when I was starting to intentionally pursue acting in addition to composing, and I appreciated their heart behind the call. But they basically were saying that you should just choose one.
Hmm.
Um, and you're not going to do yourself any favors spreading yourself out too thin. And I thought about it. I pondered it, and in
And
the
you
end,
said,
I came to
"Watch
the
me."
I did come to the conclusion that we're all called to do multiple things in our life, and no one ever questions that. I'm called to be a good husband, a good father, a good friend, a hard worker. I don't just focus on one of those. That's not reality. So why, when it comes to your career, would I assume that I can only do one of those things? I
Right,
think we
right.
all strive to excel in all of the different cups of our life,
Hmm.
and similarly, I just felt like I won't be able to choose. I feel equally passionate and called to those two paths, and I don't see how they're completely opposite. They're in the same
Yeah, exactly.
vein. I just need to figure out how to make that work. And so that's what I'm in the process of doing. But
It's interesting.
I
I feel like this what you just described. I've heard it labeled a career portfolio. So it's like you have a career that's not in just one track, but you have a variety of places where you operate. Right. You, for example, you're
yes.
doing acting and composing. And other people might have sort of different avenues where they operate and have different streams of income or different places where they act professionally. Uh,
Yes.
and I think it seems to me it's becoming increasingly more popular with our generation to have something like that. And I think it's great. And I think one of the most important things in that, and it seems like you're doing that very well, is that there should probably be a golden thread that connects all the different avenues, right? And with you, I mean,
Yes.
acting and composing, as you just described, in some way they're both connected to the same fountain, right? And so
Mhm.
they it, it's they're almost like two different sides of a coin. They're not that different, and you're you were called to do both in different capacities, right? I think that's so interesting.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily, it does come with its challenges. I will say
Right, for
that,
sure.
you know, we are one person. And because we are one person, it is hard to divide your energy and your time and your commitments. But if you are determined and you're creative in how you do it, it is definitely possible. And I would encourage anyone who's listening who does feel torn about these things. It's if you have multiple interests. When it comes to film, I think you are more marketable when you do have a couple different things you can do. And that's how a lot of people rise to where they are. A lot of A-listers in the filmmaking world started, that whole legendary start in the mailing office, and then you work your way up.
Hmm.
Be the best that you can be in the mailroom, and then when you get to be a PA, be the best PA that you could ever be, and then working your way up to second AD and first AD, and then directing your own
Hmm.
film. Just if you stayed in one lane, you would never push yourself beyond to those other positions. So I think the key is, if you're passionate about something and you have skill in those areas. I've also seen people who don't have skill and they just push and push and
Right,
push and
that's
push.
an important distinction.
And you got to know when, if people are encouraging you to say, or encouraging you like, hey man, maybe you should try a different path. That's a whole nother thing. But if you, have skills and passions and desires, just work hard at whatever it is before you, which will launch you into the next phase of where you want to go.
Yeah. Is there a good way, would you say, to distinguish if someone has multiple interests? Is there a good way to discern, okay, these paths I should follow, this one maybe it's something to pursue later or something to not
Yeah,
pursue? Is there a way to discern between those things?
I think so. I think what is going to make money for you right now, I think is a big one.
Yeah.
Those of us who, especially if you're married, you have a family and you're trying to pay the bills, a big old green flag is if it's going to bring in some income for you. So that in my particular case, music is what took off first. So when I was basically taken under the wing of a composer friend of mine. Didn't go to school for composing. Went to school for music ministry at a Bible college about an hour north of where I currently live. And so all of it was very fresh and new to me, and I couldn't get enough of it. Just spent hours figuring out how to do Logic, figuring out, you know, instrument software and trying to find the most real way to convey what I wanted to convey musically, and lots and lots of hours into that. And then slowly started building up opportunities. I worked for an audio production company for a while, and during that time is when I was really developing musically. And so I was getting side gigs to write music for various projects, and then they just got bigger and better, and started doing some work for production libraries and films. And so that was the one that was clearly going to provide more of uh, a steady income for me. Steady, I
Hmm.
use that term very loosely.
We all do.
uh, yeah, but it made sense. But I did still have that desire to be an actor someday. I did some acting
Yeah.
in high school. It just didn't seem, like you said, the timing was not right.
Hmm.
And so my outlet became social media. And so 10, 12 years ago, my first sketch that I started doing that I felt like people really like this. I was doing this character called Milton McMusical, and he was like a music professor and taught musical concepts, and he was just a really weird, wacky, outrageous character. And I remember the first few times I did that, and the sort of response was like, oh, maybe this is how I can kind of, you know, scratch that itch, so to speak, of acting, meshing it with my musical. Because I started on social media to promote my music and my musical work, not to pursue acting. And then it just kind of a light bulb went on. This could be the way I kind of push forward simultaneously with my music career.
With the
And then
music.
that's how I got into acting. I was looking for a composing agent, and um, I had an agent who I had contacted. I knew they didn't represent composers, but I heard really good things about them. So just, I had reached out to them, and sure enough, she said, yeah, we don't I don't, you know, represent composers, but feel free to keep in touch. She must have started seeing me on social media at that point. Maybe she, looked at my stuff, and she reached out and said, hey, by the way, I think you have acting chops. Would you mind if I send an audition your way and see what you can do with it? And that was it. 2020 wasn't, again, not seeking out specifically how I'm going to get acting off the ground,
Hmm.
but it ended up being my avenue in. She signed me like a month later, and I started booking stuff shortly thereafter, which was really, because you hear horror stories of audition after audition after audition after audition
Right.
and
Right.
not getting anything. I think if that would have happened to me, I would have burnt out really quickly, because
Hmm.
it's definitely the long game when it comes to those
Right.
things. But one of the first auditions I booked, which was a commercial uh, out in North Carolina for a nonprofit called Samaritan's Purse.
Hmm.
And
That's amazing.
yeah, so very shortly after I got to be on set, experienced it. It was a great first experience on set, and I caught the bug. I've never recovered. And that
Hmm.
really made me even more determined to make it work, and has help me in these dry seasons, which a lot of actors are experiencing right now. It's just not a hot market right now for actors of our caliber. So anyway, that would be my encouragement. What makes the most sense right now for you to pursue one of your passions, and then find a creative way to, whether it be social media and beyond, of how to keep practicing, honing your skills
Hmm.
in the other area that you're interested in. And then who knows what may come of that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. You're the best kind of guest, by the way, because I was gonna ask you about that that the email that changed your acting career, and you just went there naturally. So thank you for doing
Wow.
that.
Thank you.
um. So okay, one thing I really love that you do. So on social media, you're taking these big risks, right? You're trying, you're kind of reaching for the stars and trying to contact either a big producer or a big actor or somebody. And I recently saw your Culver's the musical work. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so for those of you who are not from the Midwest, which most of you probably are not, because we have less people here in the Midwest, there is a burger chain called, you guys have In-N-Out, we have Culver's, and it's really, really good. And I've had In-N-Out, big fan of In-N-Out, by the way. Every time I'm out in that area, I go. But Culver's is really good. I have always loved trying to find creative ways to connect. And I just think we have such a unique opportunity now with content creation, with social media, to reach farther than typically you have historically been able to reach because of gatekeeping. If a producer or a restaurant chain is behind some sort of, if the only way to get to them was going to their corporate headquarters or calling or emailing, there's so many layers between you and them. Whereas on social media, if they have a social media account, you can get right to them and they can get it to the right. And if you can't get it to them, someone may see it that is
Someone
able to
may,
get it to them.
right?
Yes. So that's what I did. I always try and think of what am I uniquely suited to provide that maybe they haven't heard before. And so I thought, I'm going to write, as a big fan of Golden Age musicals, I'm going to write a little musical ditty targeting Culver's. And within, I think it was 48 hours, it had reached their CEO. So someone had messaged me and said, hey, I know the stepson of the CEO. I sent it to him. He loves it. He sent it to his stepdad. And so they reached out. I got a little gift box from them, and it was cool. It was really, really neat.
I
And
love that.
I love doing those kind of things to encourage people to reach farther than maybe they even think they can, and to find out what you uniquely can offer to connect with people.
I love that. And I think this what you do illustrates something that I think is very important for creatives, which is that you're always showing up. Like you don't always know the what the end result's going to be, right?
Yes.
You you don't know. Maybe you'll write this whole thing and it will just end up being something entertaining for your audience and that's about it.
Right.
Or it can reverberate and go somewhere else, right? And reach the CEO of a major company, and who knows what else is going to come of it, right? So
Yes.
that idea of constantly showing up is something I'm learning myself, which is it's one thing to wait for the inspiration to kind of strike and work only when that happens, but if you were to do that, at least for me, I I'd work like once a month, which doesn't do anything. So you have to show up, you have to come in and sit down and do things and then and most importantly, put them out there, right? That's something
Yes.
I'm working on being better at, and you're very good at that. Putting it out there and seeing what happens,
Yes.
right? And then you kind
Yep.
of you build a plane as you go, you tweak, you hone your craft and so on. So I think I think that illustrates a really important purpose or point for creative people, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just a little afterthought of that. We are. I feel like we tend to be an immediate gratification and immediate results
Mm,
culture because we are able to get most things quickly now.
yeah.
Amazon, I just saw an article, Amazon's going to start experimenting with half an hour delivery. We're
Oh
just,
my gosh.
we're getting so used to boom, 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 boom. I press purchase, it comes in my, is on my doorstep in 2 days.
Hmm.
I everything's very quick. I can put something in the microwave and 30 seconds later it's coming out piping hot. And so we apply that to our growth and development as people, and it doesn't work that way. So therefore, if you think that way, a video that you spent, like I spent a decent amount of time writing that song,
I
putting
bet.
instrumentation behind it, recording it, editing it, all of that stuff. If it didn't reach Culver's, people would think that's a failure, that
Hmm.
didn't do what you set out to do. Therefore, check that off as it didn't work. And
Hmm.
I'm just, and you said it, I'm a big advocate for it doesn't matter if your goal for that particular video or particular project was reached, because you are gaining invaluable experience by doing it.
Hey, I'm quickly interrupting all this great stuff because if you haven't already, I invite you to join me over on my Substack page. That is kind of my headquarters. It's my hub where all of my mission operates from. So if you want to keep up with everything I'm doing, all of my projects, including music and podcasts and everything else, head over there. That's also the best place where you can support me financially if you resonate and believe in the work that I'm doing. The way to access that is by going to musicbyvinicius.substack.com. That is music by vinicius.substack.com. I'm going to leave a link here in the description so you can find me. Thank you very much. And now back on with the show.
So much of progress is built in the long run. Character is built by going through long seasons of just sticking to it and not giving up without seeing immediate results. And so therefore, when you do see results, finally, eventually, you're ready for it. And so I think so often we're jumping, either we're giving up because we're not seeing immediate
Mm-hmm.
results, or we're given too much opportunity too soon and we're just not prepared for it. And I would love for people to get more used to the idea of it's all part of the journey. It sounds cliche, but it is so true. Everything that you're experiencing right now, the good, the bad, the ugly, is helping you prepare for what lies ahead. And if you're able to view it that way, nothing that you're doing when you're, putting in the work and committed and doing, checking all the boxes, it's not wasted, even if it's not the results you were expecting or hoping for.
Yeah, that's really good. How do you go about building a resilience then when, let's say, maybe in the back of your mind, inevitably you did have a goal or something that you wanted to get out of this particular project and it doesn't happen? How do you build that resilience?
Well, it helps if you're just a little dense. I'm just not one to easily give up. I think what was really helpful for me, this sounds funny, but um, I went to, for example, growing up, I was homeschooled, and then eventually, when I was in high school, I went to a Christian school. But we played sports as homeschoolers, and when we were at this Christian school, for this Christian school right across the river from us, and we never were great at sports. And uh, so I was very used to losing by the time I graduated. Loved, like, I played basketball, I played soccer, I played baseball, and then did track my senior year. So I loved sports, and I loved the process of competing, and um, felt like, I had developed quite well as an athlete by the end of my high school, and then played basketball in college. Um, and we weren't very good there either. So I was just so used to, you do it because you love what you're doing. You don't do it necessarily because you win in the end. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so many good things come out of competing. You learn to play as a team. You get better at your individual skills. You sweat, and it's good for you. It's good for your body to move and exercise, and so many good things came out of it that didn't result in a win for me.
Mm-hmm.
And coming from small town America too, I think helps, where I don't know, so many people that have told me their experience growing up in either New York City or Los Angeles, in the hot spots of art, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's so different than here. That you are just hit with reality a lot quicker and harder in those areas. And for me, because I was outside of it and just knocking on doors from small town middle America, I feel like it kind of worked in my favor, because I didn't go in jaded. I didn't go in cynical. I went in
Mm.
with big dreams and just
Yeah.
thought, if that didn't work, I'll just have to try it another way. There
Mm-hmm.
wasn't this constant, hey, I just did 100 auditions and didn't get any. Or, I've been trying to score a film for 5 years and I can't get beyond, a certain level. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
being fed that. So there was an element of innocence, and just, I was unscathed by those
Yeah.
kind of attitudes. And so the people around me
You
were
mean
like,
because there
go
weren't
for
people
it.
around you? Like there weren't people around you
Yes.
that were constantly getting no's and like you said, getting jaded and sort of just developing this cynicism that sometimes comes
Yes.
when you're in that environment. Yeah. That's
Yes.
so
Exactly.
that's a huge differentiator.
I also think, and I always encourage composers or actors, let's just take composing, for example, to, if you are reminded by your peers or by a mentor that they know you can do it, like if you just know it's a matter of opportunity, not of
Mm-hmm.
ability, because I think so often we paralyze ourselves with feelings of inability, and maybe I'm not getting opportunity because I can't do it. That's why I'm not. And so I have found it extremely helpful, and I was better at this when I was first starting out, where I would write a piece and then I'd send it to a few of my mentors, fellow composers. I had a music supervisor who was the head of music at Walden Media back in the day when they were doing Narnia and Charlotte's Web and Journey to the Center of the Earth, and they were doing incredible work. I had reached out to him on LinkedIn and said, "Would you just listen to my music? I don't want to be one of those people that you see on American Idol that thinks they can sing and someone's been lying to them their entire lives and they're wasting their time. I want to know right now, can I do this?" And he responded and said, "Dude, I think you have talent. I love working with young composers. Let's keep in touch." And that kind of relationship where you have someone who says, "You can do this. I know you can do this. Let's just figure out how to get you to where you want to be."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that is just invaluable to continue to refine your skills by bouncing off your work with other composers and other musicians, and to not only get their critique, but also they're like, "Dude, this is great. Keep keep
Yeah.
keep it up." Then you're not paralyzing yourself with feelings of insecurity and inability. It's more a matter of, how do I focus on getting myself, because I know I can do it, getting myself to where I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's so easy to develop this imposter syndrome, right? Where
My word.
you're
Yes.
just making work in a vacuum, especially the composing work. The acting work, I think, is you tell me, but it you may be able to get a little bit more of an immediate feedback because you're acting with other people.
Right.
But in the composing world, you can see it right there on your rig if you're watching this. You sit in a by a desk and you compose by yourself in a room, and for a long time nobody hears your work, and it doesn't
Right.
see the daylight, or it may see the daylight, but you don't get immediate feedback in any significant way. So you may be writing amazing stuff and thinking that it sucks, or the opposite, which hopefully that's not the case for anybody. Um, but but it's very easy to develop that kind of imposter syndrome. And what you mentioned, getting a getting some kind of a community, even if it's small, even if it's a handful of
Yes.
trustworthy people that whose opinion you trust, whose taste you trust, and who are there to tell you straight. If you send them something and it's not that good, they will tell you. Hopefully they'll do it gently, but they will do it truthfully, and it's a great way to get feedback. I don't think much creative work um, gets refined without friction, right? So you need a little
Hmm.
bit of that friction. You need a little bit of somebody who you're a little afraid of sending so and so a piece of music because you know they have a high taste and a high
Yes.
bar for excellence and so on. So uh, it's so valuable to do that, to kind of bounce things off of people.
Yes. Do you know who someone who has been that for me that you might know? I can't remember if we've spoken about this person before. Uh, William Ross,
Yes.
Bill Ross.
Well, yeah.
Some know
Tell
him as
tell
Bill
people who he
Ross.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
as
he
you do.
he is an orchestra. I think he's probably more known for his orchestrating. He orchestrates for John Williams often. Has done his Harry Potter films, the newest Indiana Jones, the Star Wars, and
As big as it gets. Like as
as
big as
big
it
as it
gets.
gets. Yeah, he's an
Yeah.
A-list orchestra. Has worked with Barbra Streisand and uh, plenty of other performers. So he's just an incredible person who knows what he's talking about. And he is one person that I connected with through this music supervisor that I mentioned before. Um, and that music supervisor's name is Lindsay Fellows. And he's just an incredible guy. He found, I said, I'm going to be coming out to LA, and uh, can you help me maybe connect with some people while I'm there? And Bill Ross was one
Hmm.
of them. Ended up meeting with him at his home studio, which was in a converted pool house on his property. It was so cool. It's right next to the
That's
pool.
amazing.
You walk in and it's a studio. Like there's a little welcome desk, and then his studio is off to the right.
What a
And
dream.
met with him. Yeah, it was supposed to be like a 15-minute meeting. Ended up being 45 minutes, and I got
Wow.
to see the. Uh, he was working on Star Wars, The Last Jedi at the time, and he had John Williams' handwritten score laid out on his desk. And so I got to see that, and we got to nerd out about John Williams for a while.
Did you touch it to see
Uh,
if you could get a little bit of the mojo out?
I did. I wasn't bold enough. I should have asked. I
You
was
were in the
too
same room with it.
nervous.
That's good enough.
Yes, yes. And so I had a great first connection with him. And he is for one thing, one nugget of wisdom that he shared with me that day that I always like to tell people that I think is just such a healthy perspective is I was admittedly a little starstruck. I kept thanking him for taking time. I know how valuable 45 minutes during a workday is. And he said, Aaron, listen, this is how I always view this when people reach out to me that want to speak with me. You are somebody's son. And I always think of my own sons, whatever they're interested in, if I would want the people who are excelling in that field to take the time out of their day to speak to my son and pour into them and help them become better at whatever they're interested in. I know you're somebody's son. And so I want to make time for you to help you get to where you want to be. I was like, that is such a good way of thinking it, because
Isn't
sometimes
That's
you're
a
just like,
wonderful perspective.
I don't have time. I like so often we're kind of assessing who we're going to make time for and those kind of things. And when you put it that way and realize everybody has a dad, and those dads want to see their sons or daughters succeed at what they're doing. So that was a really cool thing to hear. But
That's beautiful.
basically, since then, he has been a sounding board for me. Whenever I have like a big project or something that I'm really excited about, I don't send him every piece that I do, but if I feel like this is something I really want to be special, he is very good at sending me critique, and he's so good at doing it. So he'll always do, it's like it's a formula where he'll say what he likes about it, give some critique. This is what you need to work on. And then at the very end, he'll finish it with, but overall, great piece, lovely work. And so you end up feeling challenged, but super encouraged. Number one, he took the time to listen to it. Number two, he gave detailed feedback on what he thinks you could improve because he wants you to excel. And that is just, if you have some of those people in your life, that is incredibly invaluable to have, because you, like you said, you can choose to be in a vacuum as a composer. You can completely isolate yourself. Yes. And then you're not going to better yourself that way. So do you have someone in your life that is a good, I only listed one, but that is a good sounding board for you, or someone that you would want to send something that you're working on that you really care about?
Yeah, I have two people, both of which are in my family. My dad is a big one. So my dad is he's not a professional musician, but I think it's useful. Obviously, it's very useful to get someone's opinion who is a master of the craft, like Bill.
Yeah.
I think it's useful also to get the perspective of somebody who is like a civilian, someone who would be listening to your stuff. So my dad is that case.
So
he's
true.
not a professional musician. He's a doctor, but he's a guitar player. He dabbles, and he's actually a big reason why I became a musician. I wrote a whole piece about that at some point. And so for him, it's like I'll show him some stuff, and he will give me a little bit of feedback. Now, granted, his feedback is often like, "Oh, my son, this is wonderful," So it's more
of
like
course.
it might be a little bit more ego boosting, but so he's useful in that sense. Now, here's the unexpected one. So my wife, who is not musical, often will come in as I'm working, because I work from home. She'll come in and listen to what I'm doing, and particularly there was this one project where I had to write some songs for it. And I'm not really a songwriter. I'm a composer. I don't really write music with lyrics that often. But for a variety of reasons in this project, I ended up having to write some songs. And I wrote the lyrics, I sang on them, et cetera, et cetera. I played some instruments, and I recorded them here in my studio. And she came to listen to them, and very gently, she basically pointed to me, this particular way of singing, that's not you. Like, that's not coming from you. And I really thought about it, because I mean, there's nobody who knows me better than she does. So
right.
I thought about it, and I was like, okay, she I think she's right about this. So then I changed the way that I was singing completely, and then this song just clicked. And I was like, oh my gosh.
So cool.
So ever since now, I have to show her everything, because she can detect. There's something that she can detect. It's this kind of, you can't measure it, but there's something that she's able to detect, and she can tell, particularly when I'm writing a song, which I don't do that often, but I'm trying to do more of. But she can kind of pinpoint it and go, okay, you got something here, and you're not trying to be somebody else. You're just being you. And I think that's something that I think is increasingly valuable in creative work, is kind of finding a way to I don't know, transfer some of your own personality, yourself, etc., into your work. I think that's a huge deal, especially, we can touch on this subject in a bit, especially in this age of AI, right? Where it's so it's easy to come up with something that's just a piece of music, but it probably won't have that special something that comes from being made by somebody with a soul, right? So
Yes.
there's a there's a I don't know, there's a spark in it. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Yeah, and the whole idea of having I have found people to be very apologetic when they don't really know music. People when they speak with a person that does music professionally, they kind of put on this like, I appreciate music. I listen to a lot of music, but I don't do anything with music. And
Mm-hmm.
I always like to encourage people that is the fact that you appreciate music for one thing and can recognize good music is invaluable. And those of us who are creating music, our music disappears without an audience. And
Yeah. Yeah.
therefore
Those are
the
the people we're
audience
creating this for.
exactly. So we need to hear from them uh what they think it is about our music that resonates with them and really helps like you lean into your
Mm-hmm.
specific signature sound and sticking to that. That we could talk forever, I think, but this whole idea of having your own sound, some composers are almost like a how would I would describe it, where their colors kind of all go together, where you can't really distinguish, that's this composer, or that's this composer. And then there's other ones that completely, within 5 bars,
Right away.
which composer it is. And I think there's strengths to both, but I've
Mm-hmm.
always gravitated toward, I'd rather have my sound that everyone knows that's Aaron. And if I want that type
Mm-hmm.
of sound, I'm going to go with that because I think it is good to stretch yourself musically, to try new genres and to try new things, but to never shy away from what your sweet spot is and what you get the most joy out of. And I think Williams is a great example of he
Mm-hmm.
knows what the type of music he wants, and the directors that work with him hire him because they want a specific sound.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
he's never been. He uses synths sometimes, but
Sometimes,
very
but not known for it. Yeah.
no, he's very very limited in the like electronic sound. For example, that Hans Zimmer has mainstreamed, I think,
Yes. Yeah.
really has done an excellent job at that. So I I think it's so important to know what your sound is. Clearly,
Yes.
your wife knows what your sound is, what your voice
Better than I
is,
do.
and yeah, and telling you, helping you stay in that. Like you want to write the best music that you know you can, find that, stay in that because that's your contribution.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the best way to develop that? To develop that sound, your own sound, right? The sound of your own voice.
Yes, I think a a great way to do it is because some people would shy away from just imitating other composers. Honestly, I think that's one of the best ways to find your sound. You definitely gravitate towards a certain and this is nothing new. So many people uh, sometime for kicks and giggles look up what some of the greatest composers who have ever lived during the like classical romantic era, um, Baroque even, who they look to as their guiding star composing wise, and they'll say Bach. So many of them go back to
Mm-hmm.
Bach as you want to know music, study him,
Go to Bach.
and obviously Beethoven, Mozart, Tchaikovsky, all of these people, they had their own sound, but they had musical heroes that they listened to and,
Mm-hmm.
and learned from as well. So I think it is important to gravitate and listen to a lot of music that you like, that you
Mm-hmm.
love, that you can't get enough of. And once you're saturated with that and you get a healthy dose of that, I think your voice, your natural distinct voice will come through in the music that you're writing, um,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's in the style of one of your musical heroes. And and so to me, it's consume a lot of the music that you like and that resonates, and then start writing and see what comes out. And I think a lot of times it's very organic. and then people can pinpoint it. Like you said, other people are probably better at pinpointing what it is they like about your
Yes.
music than you yourself will be. But I think it's always good to have heroes. Look up to
Hmm.
whoever you're looking up to and love. Don't shy away from that. Don't think, oh, they're going to taint my sound. They're going to
Hmm.
help you find your own sound.
Yeah, that's a great bit of advice. I heard the great Rick Rubin, who's the music producer, talk about something similar, which is, if you go and try to, let's say you're going to try and replicate or try and imitate in some way the John Williams sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're composing, if you do that, it's not going to sound like John Williams. It's going to sound like Aaron sort of
Right?
aiming at John Williams, which in itself already has a distinct and interesting shape to it, right? So
Yes.
I think that I really agree with you. I think it's a great way to kind of develop that. Is it the same with acting? How do you do it with acting?
Yeah. With acting, I think so much of it is natural. Um, Music is the same, but I think a lot of times, you practice and you practice and you practice, and then slowly those things develop and you kind of figure out those things. But I have found acting to be so instinctual. Um, and the people that I respect and admire the most in the acting world, and I especially lean comedy. I love good comedy, and I think it takes a lot of skill to do comedy. And
They say it's the
uh,
hardest genre to do, right? As in acting,
yeah,
is that
yes. Even though it's definitely, I hear comedians all the time, comedic actors express their frustration, for example, of they're never acknowledged at the main. I would say more at the Emmys, but never at the Academy Awards. There's just not a lot
hmm
of uh, respect as an industry given to
for
comedic
the comedy
films.
folks?
Yeah. Um, but the ones that I have heard interviewed, a lot of them didn't would say the same thing, that even though they did a lot of training, they did you know, improv and have studied under certain actors, but a lot of them didn't, and they just uh a lot of them express the importance of going with your gut. And like,
Mm.
you can, some people thrive under learning under great teachers and mentors. Um, but I think that signature that you're talking about is there very, very early on. Um, and it's a natural thing that comes out as you do it. So
As you do it.
I think a lot of acting, at least in my experience, again, I think there's a lot of broad perspectives on how people approach this. But for me, I am better when I go with my instincts, not when I
Hmm.
over prepare.
That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. Um, I once watched a clip of you performing the famous monologue from It's a Wonderful Life, one of the very many famous monologues from It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
That scene where George Bailey is confronting Potter, right, and
Yep.
telling him telling him about his dad and so on, which I loved, and I think you did such a wonderful job. Um,
Thank you.
I have a few questions about that, but one is this, and I'd love to get your take on it. I love that movie. It's a Wonderful Life. We're recording this. We're around the Christmas season. I am 100% gonna watch that movie this year. I watch it every year. It's
So am
my
I.
Christmas staple.
Mm-hmm.
Um, of course, it's one of the greatest movies of all time. Um,
Yes.
and it comes from an era that you and I already talked about, which is the golden age of filmmaking that is so near and dear to both of us. I I can't help but to think that there was something going on in that era. There's some kind of a spark or a glow that I I don't know if we've lost it or if we've misplaced it or what's going on, but there feels like there's a fundamental difference between what people were making then and what, not all of us, but what kind of is mainstream being made these days. I guess my question to you is, do you sense that as well? Which I have a feeling that you do, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. But if
Yeah.
so, what's going on? What do you think?
That is a big question. And I think probably multifaceted. So I'll do as I just coached myself and said about going with my gut. And I will give my gut perspective on why this may be.
Give us your
I,
gut.
I, I do, I do think the golden age will always be remembered that for good reason, whether you're someone who likes black and white movies or movies from that era or not. I think even people who don't love that era can look at it and understand why it's called the golden era, golden age. And I can't help but think, you know, there's always been a conflict between art and business. That is that tension will always be there, has always been there. Um, Everyone knows movies can make a lot of money. That's why you have business people clamoring to be part of, getting a slice of pie from that industry. And you have businesses running art, and artists want to tell stories, and they don't love the business side often. Sometimes they overlap. You, for example, from what I understand, love the overlap of business and art, but many artists just want to create art, but they know they need the people that know how to finance them. And
Yeah.
so they
Yeah.
end up often not liking each other. There's kind of this dismissive attitude of the financial people of just put a movie out there and all the people will come see it, and then the money will come in, and then we can pay you again and go out and make more movies. And artists kind of resent the fact that you guys just think we're here to, you're paying us to bring in more money for you. So I think that's always been there, but I think it was probably at a healthier balance during that period, where there was more of a, for example, I'll take MGM. I read Goldwyn Mayer's, the Mayer part of that, Louis B. Mayer. I read his biography recently. And so really he was the one that saw it become what it was known as. There are more stars in MGM than there are in the heavens. That was their tagline. They had all of the A-list people there. They were making incredible amounts of money. But one thing that Louis B. Mayer did very, very well, he was just as business-like as many studio execs are today, but he trusted the people that he put in charge of the artistic vision of MGM. So, for example, Arthur Freed was a producer in charge of all of the great musicals that we know and love now, like Singin' in the Rain was an Arthur Freed musical. Those had a very particular feel and sound and made a lot of money. And he apparently was very good at, if he found the right people to lead the different sections of his studio, he left them alone and trusted them. Even though everyone had flops now and then, he did trust them to take the reins and do what they do best. He knew that wasn't his strength, and so he didn't interfere as much. So based on what I was reading in this biography, there was an atmosphere of, this is a playground. We have these backlots, and we have, these sound stages and carpentry place. Like, it was just an imagination playground. And they were relatively free to, like I said, the actors were allowed to make mistakes and learn their craft and be trained. And they were all a big family, and they lived life together and created and imagined together. And now I don't think there is that level of trust, and I don't think there's that level of freedom.
Hmm.
Often, again, I'm speaking generally. I'm sure there's exceptions, but I think something that could contribute to what we're seeing now is that idea of we're not, we're so separated. You know,
Yeah.
everyone, because again, the studio system wasn't perfect, but I do think it created a community in
Hmm.
a few city blocks that you
Yeah.
came to work every day, saw the same people, worked with the same people that helped the output. And now we're so pulled and apart and separated, and you may meet someone on one project and never see them again,
Right.
and
Right.
that doesn't allow for teamwork, and the beauty of art that comes out of just doing life together,
Hmm.
as well. And I think that, to me, that could be one of the big problems that we're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. What would you say are are some of the ways to recover some of that in
Yeah.
as limited a way that any of us can do?
Yeah, I think one way is, you know, is to find the people that you like to work with and dig in with them and try and figure out
Hmm.
ways to make more content together, not just a one and done thing. That's kind of one of the things that uh, my friend Josh and I are trying to do. If you find someone you enjoy working with, find out how you can make more with them, and so that you can get better together, and surround yourself with teammates that you love working with, and try and create those opportunities of consistent work. Obviously, people freshen up casts and things like that, but theater troops were a thing for a reason. I
Yeah.
think obviously film is different than theater, but the reason you do that, and you do a bunch of different stories with the same cast, is that there's things that will come out only after spending a certain amount of time together, working together, um, having conflict together. Like, all of those
Hmm.
things create tension and resolution, and therefore, as we know, often great art comes out of
Yeah.
those kind of situations.
That's right.
So I think more people should kind of adopt that troop mentality of, let's find the people, our people, and uh, create something of a regular, yeah, not just a one and done thing. Let's make
Yeah. Yeah.
multiple movies together and get better together. Um, and there's a balance there, because you always want to. I'm a big believer in not gatekeeping, like letting new people in, but figuring out how that, like, mentorship and then bringing up to the next level works
Hmm.
within that, but still having something of a core that
Right. A core
you know.
group of people, or even a
Yes,
partnership, or that all of this other stuff flows out from. Right.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That would be my one of the solutions that I think could help, and I think indie film is the place to do that, and you know, people are pretty on edge about the news of Netflix and Warner Brothers,
Yes.
and what that could create for uh, artists and filmmakers. And, I've just been seeing a lot of people say, hey, Hollywood is not new to seismic shifts. Okay. We've had
Hmm.
so many, think about the transition from no dialogue to dialogue. That
It was
that's
huge. It was
having to
huge.
outfit theaters with sound equipment and all of it, like,
Hmm.
change literally everything. Guess what? Everyone adapted, figured out a way to do it. You're just constantly adapting.
And some
And I
people
think,
at that time were diehard, proponents of the movies, like, so the no
right,
dialogue movies, right?
silent films.
And some
Yeah.
of them would die on that hill, and others would adopt the new change and sort of work accordingly and so on, right? It's so
Yes.
interesting. It's so
Yeah.
I love the zooming out because it's so, to me at least, I don't know if everybody suffers from this, but it's very easy for me to look at something and think, this has never happened before in the history of the world. You know, oh my gosh, how are we
Yes.
ever going to figure this out? And you know, there really is nothing new under the sun. Like there
Right.
are there are cycles and patterns, and especially when we think about something like Hollywood, or just, and we use the word Hollywood here as a shorthand for just the broader, you know, movie
Right.
making environment, right?
Yes.
Whether or not it's
Yeah.
locally based in Hollywood, but it's already seen so much change and people have adapted. And I think the reason why is because um, whatever medium we use, stories are never going to go away. I think
Correct.
stories are something that we as human beings are, it's almost like food for our souls, right? And I think we're always going to keep coming back to that. I think there's always going to be room for somebody to tell a good story and for an audience to be interested in you know, taking in that story and allowing it to do to them whatever stories do, right? Does that make sense?
Totally agree. Totally makes
Yeah.
sense. Yes. And I think that's what is absolutely key. Yes, there are things to overcome when you have a crisis or a seismic shift
Mhm.
like we see with what seems like more regularity now than we have in previous
Yeah.
generations, where because technology is changing so quickly, we're seeing bigger shifts. To think about 20 years ago, Netflix was still shipping CDs or
To
DVDs
people's
in the
houses. Yeah.
mail, right? And to now that they're this behemoth who's threatening, becoming a monopoly in the
It's
entertainment
unbelievable.
industry.
It's like an
It's mind
unbelievable
blowing.
change.
Yes. So things are changing very quickly. But like you said, if we all are able to take a step back and say, we're storytellers, we're going to, this is going to create a new opportunity for how to tell stories. And are there going to be people who need to stand up to the big guy and say, this is not, we can't have this? Yes, there is going to be a
Mhm.
time for that. But when it comes to
Right.
change and being able to adapt, you, I think you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to say, okay, well, wow, this isn't how I envisioned getting into film 15 years ago, but that's okay.
Mhm.
How can I get in now? Those are the people that are going to have a long lasting uh, relationship with the industry. Because if you
Totally agree.
just are like, this is the way I want to do it, it's 5 years from now, you're gonna be a fossil, So I think a prime example of that, Kodak. I don't know if anyone remembers Kodak, but Kodak was the camera company for a
Mhm.
long, back in the when I was a kid. I remember everything. Kodak was everywhere. Kodak Moment. They were the standard for film and everything. Then, from what I understand, I had an uncle that worked for Kodak, and what happened was when digital started coming into play, the early digital cameras were horrible. Like the pixelation, they just didn't take quality photos. But uh, the fact that we could now take photos and check them and delete them without having to wait for film to be developed, that alone was revolutionary. And what Kodak thought, or would have appeared to have thought, was this is a passing craze. We are not putting our time and resources into a passing craze. We are the gold standard. And basically, they hold they do not hold weight anymore as a company. They lost their edge because they didn't foresee that being uh, a huge enough change that they're going to have to adapt. And so every company, like Apple is a great example. Apple totally has risen to what they are today because of their willingness to adapt. And that's going to be true of film and filmmakers as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is an excellent point. And and having the discernment to know when something is a fad or something that's going to pass quickly, and when it's
Yes.
not, when do you invest in it, resource wise, time wise, and when do you sort of leave it alone, kind of observe it from a distance and figure out what to do about it. Um, let's zoom out for a second. So, um, we were talking about your career. You're a composer and actor. You are, like all of us who are in the creative world, you're navigating this ever changing landscape. The creative industry is notoriously um, challenging. It can be very alluring. There can be a lot of pitfalls, right?
Hmm.
Um, and you, there are two things. I can see it right now from here. You have on top of your, above your workstation there's something that says
Yeah,
Soli Deo Gloria, glory to
yeah,
God alone, right?
you're
And
right.
you once told me this amazing story. I hope it's okay that I'm sharing it here, where we don't have to get into all the details if you don't want to, but that you turned down a project that was going to be a big sort of turning point in your composing career, and
Hmm.
and you turned it down, for a variety of reasons. Do you remember that story? And
I do remember that story.
could you share that story with the people who are listening, and tag on to that? Um, how does that, the Soli Deo Gloria, this the reason why you ended up turning down this project? How do you navigate this treacherous industry without um, losing your soul?
Yes. I would say, yeah. Let me start from the beginning. Why I have Soli Deo Gloria. Um, I mentioned Bach earlier in this interview. He is someone, talk about musical heroes. He was someone I looked up to. I studied um, music ministry in college. And during my time there, I studied music history and multiple semesters of music history. And I love music history. I think learning where we've come from and learning about the lives of individual composers is so valuable because we obviously hear these beautiful pieces of music without really knowing where it came from. But as we know, humans are very complex and artists often write out of their pain. And I've seen and heard people very poetically talk about how the lives of artists are just so interesting in the sense that they're often very broken, tormented in some ways. People, but they create art that it ends up being entertainment for people. And so it's almost like
Mm.
audiences, because they want more art, are saying, carry on in your pain so that we can benefit from what you're experiencing. And I was like, that's a really interesting, there is some truth to that.
And we're happy to oblige for a price.
Right, exactly. As long as you pay your yearly symphony fee. Uh, the the reality is a lot of the people that I studied, I was like, I do not want to end up like them. People who completely had great success, but were miserable, were lonely, were broken people. And one that really stood out as one of the most stable was Bach. And he was um, a married man with many children, loved having a family. And I, what set him apart is that he was so focused on why he wrote music. And to remind him of that, he would always add, I don't know about always, but often his pieces ended with SDG, S.D.G, which stood for the glory of God alone in Latin. And I just found out, I'm teaching my kids music history. They're homeschooled, and we have a music history or music appreciation curriculum. And one thing that I learned about Bach that I didn't know before, he also wrote at the beginning of his pieces often the Latin for Jesus help me. And I can't remember what the term is. My Latin's a little rusty. So basically, he started his pieces saying, Jesus help me do this, wrote the piece, and at the end he said, this is for you. You know, what you just gave to me, I give back to you. And that gives so much meaning and purpose to writing music. If you believe that everything's random, that nothing has purpose, that there is no higher power than myself, I don't understand how anyone doesn't lead meaningless lives. Because if you don't know where you came from, why you're here, why you've been given a gift to write music, there is this, it leads to the type of broken creators that we, have seen throughout history. And I don't want that for myself. And I don't want that for anybody. And so the fact of the matter is, I know without a shadow of a doubt, my gift is from God. I think he gave it to me for a very specific purpose, not to just waste it on myself or waste it on whatever, temporary things. He wants me to use it to bless others, to encourage, to inspire, to all of the things that music does, to move people, but ultimately to redirect people to him. And so, so often composers get the question, how do you do what you do? Where does it come from? I can't imagine hearing something in my head and then putting it down on paper or in a computer. And that is just, to me, a wide open door for me to say, I don't know how I do it either. And I really don't. Most composers can't really truthfully say, where does that come from? But for me, the understanding of this is a gift that I have been given and it's not for myself totally revolutionizes the way I look at what I do. And, as a Christian, knowing that what Christ gave up for me is so immense that why would I ever waste my time not giving what he's given to me as a gift here in talent or ability as a way to bring glory to him. So by doing that, not only does it give me meaning in my work, but it also helps me make decisions. And that, going back to what you said, the story, I was given the opportunity to, again, very little experience. I can't stress this enough, that I was given the opportunity to demo for a studio project. I think it was in 2017, and I probably started composing in 2015, 14, 15, really like doing free projects. And then in 2017, all of a sudden, I had the opportunity to demo for a studio series. It was basically it had been a feature film and was being developed into a mini series, a very successful feature film in the 90s, and was being redone. And so I couldn't believe it. The music supervisor I had mentioned earlier, he was the one that knew one of the executives, recommended me. I demoed, made it to the top 2, and then woke up. I will never forget it. Woke up one morning, checked my phone, had an email. I'd spoken to the director. I had gone through all the preliminary stuff and then got the email. They picked you, where you get to compose for this. And I remember that day. I remember where I went that night. It was just incredible. And I remember at the time, the music supervisor, Lindsay, saying, hey, this could be the turning point for you, just getting your foot in the door, maybe getting an agent's attention. This could be a huge for you. And then I asked for the script, and because I hadn't seen a script yet, And it was one of those kind of productions where they weren't sharing the script because they didn't want anybody who didn't have to have the script yet to not have it. And
Right.
so I remember they said at the time, uh, I was advised not to even ask for it until it was closer to the time where I would start scoring. And they're like, if it's content you're worried about, think Indiana Jones. I'm sure it's probably along the lines of that. And I was like, oh, okay. And then it was like 2 weeks before I was supposed to meet with the director and do a spotting session. And I got access to the script, and there was content in there that I just was not comfortable scoring and being part of the project. Because, again, this is bigger than me. I'm not just chasing opportunity and financial return. It's bigger than that for me. And so I knew, as painful as it was going to be, because I was contracted, I was committed. And so I remember showing my wife, and she looking at me, and we both were like in a state of, oh my gosh, this is a crossroads. But she looked at me and said, you can't do this. And I said, I know I can't do this. And so reached out to the producer ASAP and just said, hey, I can't do this in good conscience, and explained, and didn't respond right away. That was like the longest night of my life. I couldn't sleep. I felt sick to my stomach. I didn't, I was just afraid that the studio and all of its power would come after me, even though I had nothing. I was in an apartment. We were not rich or anything by any stretch of the imagination, but I was just, all the worst comes to mind. You take me to court. I don't know. But the next day they said, well, if you hadn't cashed the check yet, they had sent me the first check, but I hadn't cashed it yet. So they were like, okay, if no money has been transferred, we should be able to get out of this cleanly. So I did. And then the music supervisor called me and wanted to know why are you making this decision? And I explained it to him. And then he said, well, you need to talk to the executive at the studio that pushed for you to get this, because he deserves an explanation. So I had to call him and explain. And it was one of the career-wise, probably one of the most painful experiences, but one that I do not look back on with regret at all. Like, I will never look at that opportunity and say that was the one that got away, because it was absolutely the right decision. What's really cool to me is, there's a lot of I don't know, hostility within the industry between like people who disagree. And that includes politically, whatever your faith may be. There's a lot of animosity and not really a whole lot of, understanding for
Right.
differing opinions. And so I think it tends to get ugly really, really fast when you say, listen, as a Christian, I'm not comfortable doing this. And here's why. Like, you lay it out, you explain it
Right.
in a respectful manner. You often have these, and it can happen this way, these ideas that people are just going to completely destroy you and blacklist you and all of these kind of things. And people had said, this could really affect your career, that you're choosing to do this. But the conversation with the executive, although he was disappointed, he said, I do respect the fact that you care so much and have the convictions that you do enough to turn down an opportunity like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it ended up ending as best as it could have. And I thought that was that. But just to encourage anybody who may ever be in that position, the way you turn down work could impact your future. I think if I had if I had handled that differently, and I didn't handle it perfectly, full transparency there, but in that ending, closure conversation, the way we handled it led to a few years down the road, not just a few, probably 6 or 7 years down the road, that executive reached out to me again. He was with a different company and asked me to work for him again. And it was writing Christmas carols, uh, like sacred Christmas carols for something that he was working on. And I was floored that I would ever hear from him again, number one. And number two, that he would ask me to work with him again. And so I reached out, I did the project, and thanked him profusely for working with me again. And he said, totally. He said, ever since that incident, I have wanted to work with you again. So that to me was a huge lesson learned, that people aren't going to fault you for having convictions and standards that are rooted in something that is bigger than you. And if they do, that's their prerogative, and I would say
That's life.
that's
Yeah.
on them. Yeah, that happens. But a lot of people will quietly respect you for not prioritizing yourself, your career, money above those things in your life, the conviction, your faith, your motivating drive behind why you do what you do. And who knows what may come of it. And I think the important thing is to not waver from it. I have seen so many people who seem, like they do have convictions and standards, and then eventually they just break that and do whatever they want. And then it completely like they have no ground to stand on anymore for when they decide one way or the other. Because I've had people ask me, how do you decide whether you're going to do something or not? And I just think you need to come up with those things you will and won't do right from the get-go. So when I started acting, my wife and I sat down and had a conversation about, what am I going to do? What am I not going to do? And came, hard and fast. I'm not going to kiss another person on screen. So knowing that, anytime you get an audition, anytime someone asks you about a role, they know up front, this is what I'm not willing to do. And that takes all the pressure off. You've already decided, this is what I will do, this is what I won't do. If an opportunity comes along that doesn't line up with those things, it's out. And doesn't matter how great it is, doesn't matter whatever, because these are my guidelines, and I'm not going to waver from them. So then you're not making a bunch of little decisions. It's just one big decision, and then you're done.
Right. That's fantastic. Yeah. That's so helpful to do it beforehand and allow that to kind of guide you rather than doing it on the spot when you're going to be way more divided, right? Because your motivations, or the project may be really alluring, or the money, or the notoriety, whatever it might be.
Right.
That's a big deal. I think this is probably a good place for us to wrap up. Before I do that, tell me where people can go if they want to find out about your work.
Yeah, my website, aaronfullan.com, has a lot of my music samples are on there. If you want to, I'm pretty active on Facebook and Instagram, which is at Aaron Fullan, AARON FULLAN. And so I update people pretty regularly on what I'm working on there. Those would be two good places.
Perfect. I'll make sure to put those in the show notes so people can find you.
Great.
And man, thank you so much for joining me. This was a thrill. I think I think people are gonna enjoy hearing your stories and I hope people will be very encouraged by just your trajectory, your outlooks, etc. So thank you so much for coming over. Really appreciate it.
I really hope so, and I'm really grateful that you asked me to be part of this. I love that we connected, that we found each other, and that we have been able to mutually encourage each other. And I love to see you. We've talked in previous conversations about you taking these steps to do a podcast and to be more, visible
Hmm.
and intentional about doing that and creating an audience. And you're doing it. And I love to see. It's hard for composers to pull ourselves away from this kind of stuff and try to really intentionally focus on this element of it. And so kudos to you, and love love to hear what's on your heart and your mind and what you're working on. And I appreciate you very much. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you.